In this short video, I want to explore with you some of the advantages, disadvantages and options for what to drink your whiskey out of. Now, I'm going to start with perhaps the best drinking vessel to get the most out of your whiskey, and it is this little fella here. It is a tasting glass. This specific one is a Glencairn tasting glass, and just look at that heavy base. That's there for a reason. Apparently, if you drop it off of a table or something, it lands on its base and protects the rest of the glass. But it's also a handle. It feels nice in the hand, and you can hold it and look at the whiskey. You can explore the whiskey through it. And this beautiful narrowing as it comes to the top is ideal for funneling some of those aromas up into your nose. Fantastic. You can swill it, you can look at it, you can smell it, and then of course you can taste it. For me, the first time I ever taste a whiskey, I will use one of these. It helps me explore the whiskey to its full. But of course, it's not the only type. There are other versions as well. Very, very similar, but without the heavy base. This one comes from a Highland Park distillery. And it does the job. It really does do the job. The advantage over each one, not a lot really. The only drawback I find with this is when you've handled it for a little while, you then get little finger marks on it, and it's a very small detail, but can it sort of spoil the appearance of the whiskey a little bit? But it's made up for because it's so decorative as well. But you can also go for the more official tasting glass or thistle glass with the stem. Now this one's far more delicate, but the stem means you don't get your hands anywhere near it. You can have a good proper look. But of course this one has the advantage. It comes with a cover. So you can pour your whiskey in there, you can put the cover on it, that stops any dust or whatever getting into it. But more importantly, it traps those aromas. So you can give it a swirl, you can agitate it, and then get a full waft. And it's useful, but I also have to say, a lot of whiskies, you don't need that trapping, and it can make it a little bit overpowering. And here's a little technique as well, is if you get a whiskey and you pour a little bit into your hand, just a little bit, rub it together, open up that little hole in your hands, rub it together, hold it, open up that little hole, get your nose in and sniff, you'll get a massive amount of aroma coming through. Now these are specialist glasses, and it may well be you don't want to pay for a specialist glass, and you think, well, what else can I use? And of course there are options. You may, for example, have a brandy glass, and if you look at the design of the brandy glass, although brandy and whiskey are very different to each other, there's certain things that is also very similar. The tasting process, for example, you want to be able to look at it, move it, swirl it, sniff it, taste it. And it does the same job. But it may well be you don't have a brandy glass. What else can you use? Well, to be honest, a simple Paris goblet or any other type of wine glass will have a very similar effect. Just look at the shape of that. Look at the shape of that, compare that to the Glencairn. You can see that you've got the same sort of processes going on. Wide brim, able to look at it, able to sniff it, able to taste it. So those are good glasses for getting to know your whiskey with. But what if it's a whiskey that you already know? Because let's be honest, whiskey isn't just to do with flavour, taste. It's to do with experience as well. That event of having a whiskey, that connection that you have both with the occasion and also with the whiskey. So that is important. My son, I have two sons, my oldest son has this glass that I keep at home for him, which is his favourite whiskey glass. And it's a cheap Jack Daniel's whiskey glass that came in a gift set. But he loves it because he loves the feel of it. It is chunky. It's solid. And yeah, you can smell, you can swirl to a degree, but he gets pleasure from having a whiskey in this glass. And I can really understand that because I'm the same with another glass. See, I like this one, traditional whiskey tumbler. Now, if I want to explore a whiskey for the first time, I wouldn't use this one. I use this whiskey glass when I already know the whiskey, but I want to sit back with the enjoyment of it. That feels so lovely in my hand. The quality of the crystal feels and sounds so beautiful. And I can still see the whiskey. I wouldn't be able to look at it to find the legs running down the side of the glass and things like that because of the patterning on it. But I can still see the colour. I can still play with the refractions as they pass through. I can still smell it, but maybe not quite as well because it's not being funneled up to me. But here's a funny thing. Look how broad that is compared to how broad that is. And that is significant because this broad area has a larger surface area. A small amount of whiskey in there with a large surface area will affect the flavour of the whiskey. And if you want to know more about that, listen to the episode I'm doing about adding water, maybe ice, into your whiskey and the effect of that, how that works. It is important. This one, my favourite glass. Just for pure pleasure of the feel of it. But then again, you see, that's lovely when you've got time to sit back, relax. You don't always want to do that. Sometimes it's an occasion that requires something else, something special. So let me introduce you to something that's not even glass. Let me introduce you to the quake. Now, there was a time when people would go to the shore, they would pick up a seashell, cold from the water of the sea, put whiskey in that and drink from it. Those were back in the days when the whiskey could be quite rough and the chillness of the shell would tame it slightly. But this one, based on that principle, is made from metal, has two handles, and what I love about this is that you pour your whiskey into it, you take a sip, and then with the double handle, you pass it on to somebody else who takes it from you, will have a sip and pass it on, and around it goes. In our post-pandemic world, that might not sound like such a good idea, but as a tradition, as a ceremony, for example, I like to do it on Christmas Day, passing it round the Christmas table, just a little sip each, and the whiskey bonds us all together. But of course, there are times when you don't even want any ceremony. There are times when actually all you want is a quick shot. But that can be special as well. This is one of my wife's favourite glasses. It is a vintage Irish whiskey glass. And this used to be her father's. And as you can see, it's not particularly large, but it has that wide opening. You can smell, you can taste. It is for tasting, it is for drinking. But of course there are those who actually don't even want to taste it too much. Let's cut the whiskey quality down here. And let's go to the shot glass. Now this is a lovely shot glass. It feels good in the hand. I can hold it, it's got that heavy base. I can hold it, I'm not interfering with the whiskey at all. It's really more for vodka, I would suppose, for tequila, for drinks like that, when you want a small amount shotted down quickly. Again, look at it, a beautiful glass, because the glassware, the carrier of the drink, it is important. It's part of the sensation. And of course, there are times when you don't need any of this, when the occasion doesn't require you to sit back to look. There are times when you could be out walking and it's cold and it's biting and you want somebody to give you that little pick-me-up, that mobile experience. This is when the hip flask comes to its own. You open it up. Now, if you've got a glass with you, fine, pour it out. But the reality is, on a walk, you're not going to stop, pour, sniff, examine and stuff like that. You just want a quick little taste, warm you up, and off you go. The message I'm giving here is what you drink your whiskey out of affects the experience. Because whiskey isn't just a drink, it is an experience. Treat it with care. Treat it with a little bit of love. And you will get so much more out of it.